Hello, welcome back to the Sudokult discussion. And today we are going to be continuing our series on set equivalence theory. And this is going to be number 3 in the series. So if you haven't watched 1 and 2, I do recommend you watch those because we are going to be assuming that you know what we talked about. But if you have watched those and you're ready for this, welcome. Please do watch this. It'll be very interesting. We're going to be going over the Exocet, which actually has nothing to do with set. But it happens that you can use set to both define and find exocets and make them easier to understand. So we're going to be doing something similar to what we did with MSLS, where we're going to be going over the traditional way to describe exocets, and then we're going to be showing the set way to do it. And hopefully the set way is both more approachable, more easier to understand, and easier to actually employ in your solves. So with me, as always, is Philip Newman, our resident Sudoku professor, who will be going over all of this with us. And so, yeah, go ahead and get started, Philip.
Hello, everyone. It's been a while for various reasons. Somebody got married.
Yeah.
Somebody kept getting sick. Yeah. So we're back. So we're going to be talking about exocets today. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, and I guess I should say that we did have a challenge puzzle from last time. And if you're still waiting for the solution to that, wait for the end of the video because you're going to want to know what we're going over here before we go over the solution to that.
We're going to build to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to build all the scaffolding first, and then hopefully that'll be a piece of cake. So, so what is an exocet?
What is
an exocet? Just in general, is the idea of proving that two cells, which are called the base cells, have to be duplicated in two other cells called the target cells. And we're not talking about things like banding, where, say, we had a 5-7 pair here and the 5-7 here, so there has to be a 5-7 there. That's just basic pointing and tuples and things like that. Exocets are more complicated things. They're the things that you resort to when nothing else is working. And sometimes for the very hardest puzzles, they will at least help simplify it a little bit. They may not solve the puzzle on their own, but sometimes they're all that is there. So we're going to talk about a little bit of how to spot them. They are tricky to spot, but a little bit of the thought process that goes into spotting them and how they relate to set. So I'm actually going to start with set in this case. And I'm going to look at, well, getting ahead of myself there. I'm going to look at these 9 cells. I'm going to color them blue. If you've watched our fish video, you've seen patterns like this before, where there are a bunch of digits lining up in the same rows and columns, and the different digits are restricted. So in this case, we only have 5 different digits. There's no 1, 2, 8, or 9. They're all from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
So how I might approach this as a set problem is, let's say we add these columns to blue. And then we're going to add the rows like this. Why did I pick those rows? Well, one reason I picked those rows is the other digits are mostly in those rows.
Yeah, we've got a 1 down
here. Yeah, there's a 9 down here, but we don't want to put this in red because it would get rid of these. So that's where I would start if I were looking for set.
Yeah, so we're looking for rows that don't contain the givens that formed that block, but do contain the givens that aren't in blue already.
Yeah. And by adding these columns to blue, we actually got some more of those digits. We got another 6, 3, and 7. It's not enough in this case, though. So in red, we have a 1, a 2, an 8, and a 9. So they need to be in blue. This is an exact equivalence. We put 3 rows in red, we put 3 columns in blue. So they have to have 3 sets of 1 to 9, and then we got rid of the overlap. So there's a 1, a 2, an 8, and a 9 in blue somewhere. The problem is we have 6 empty blue cells. So we've got 2 degrees of freedom. We could have 5 or 6 digits from 1, 2, 8, 9 in those blue cells. Or we could just have 4 and somewhere else there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the blue cells. So we can't get anywhere directly with this set. Okay, so what can we do instead? What we're going to do instead is I'm going to explain where the Exocet is and how it works. And hopefully you'll see how it relates to those columns that I just showed.
Okay.
So I'm going to highlight these 2 cells. And those may seem completely unrelated to anything I just talked about. But one relation is they can only contain digits from 1, 2, 8, 9, which was our red digits, right?
Right.
So they're limited. Okay, well, these are also limited. Maybe that doesn't tell us anything. I'm going to highlight these cells as well. This one can also be from 1, 2, 8, 9. This one can be a 4 in addition to 1, 2, 8, 9. Okay. So what the Exocet is going to tell us is that whatever digits are in orange are also in purple. And that seems kind of magical. We don't even know at this point that the purple cells are different digits. For all we know, they could both be 1, and this is 1, and that looks fine, right? We've got our 3 1s. No problem. Okay. So let's go back to those columns. And hopefully you'll notice which columns I highlighted. They're the same ones from the set.
Same ones from the set.
How they relate to the base and the target cells. If I didn't say that already, I've already forgotten whether I said this. The orange cells are called base cells. The purple cells are called target cells.
Right.
So we're trying to show that whatever's in the base cells is in the target cells. So 2 of the blue columns go through the target cells. The third one goes through the box with the base cells, but does not contain either of the base cells. It's the other column.
Right. So since you always have 2 base cells in the same box,
right,
they're also always going to be in the same row or column, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna always say row and column in this orientation, but just keep in mind that obviously the puzzle can be flipped 90 degrees, and we just swap row and column in our terminology.
Yeah. So for this particular type of Exocet, so this is going to be a junior Exocet. So this was found as a pattern that is relatively common, at least in hard puzzles, that is easier to find than some other Exocets, which we'll talk about some other ones.
Okay, so there's going to be 2 of the base cells in a box, and so one of the columns will not have those base cells, and that's the column that we're highlighting.
Yeah, I should say this. The 2 base cells will also share a row or a column. Mm-hmm. In this case, a row. The 2 target cells will be in the other 2 rows of that band. Or if it's columns, it'll be the other 2 columns of that stack.
Right.
So we'll stick with rows.
Yeah, we'll just say bands and rows for this example.
And then the blue cells are in columns, but this could all be flipped. Okay. So this column goes through this box without touching the base cells. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, outside of the middle band, we can't say much. We can't really see directly how these cells are going to be related to the base cells and the target cells. But inside this band, you can notice that the base cells see the other blue cells that are not already filled. Other than the target cells. Well, we're considering that they're purple, but we're considering them also blue. So whatever goes in this orange cell is not going to be in any of these. So if we can show that it has to be somewhere in these columns in the middle band, then we know it has to be in the target cells. All right.
Right. So these are actually the 6 cells. You use the given 6 as well, but we had 6 cells in that set that you attempted.
Exactly.
And those are 4 of the 6 that we've now. Other than the target cells, 4 of those 6 cells can't be the same as our 2 orange cells.
Right. Yeah, basically we've shown that 4 of those empty blue cells that we looked at before can't be what's in orange. So hopefully we can show that orange has to be in purple.
Right.
So how do we finish that process? So let's look at what happens if this is a 1, just as an example.
Okay.
It might not be a 1. It might be something else. Where does 1 go now in the blue columns? We have to have 3 1s somewhere. Well, it can't go in row 1 because we've already got a 1. It could go in row 2. In fact, it can't go there because it shares a box. It can't go in row 3 because of the givens. It can't go in row 7 because of the givens, or row 9 because of the givens. Could go in row 8. Okay.
And when we're talking about bands 1 and 3, those 2 outer bands, filling the 1 in orange didn't affect that. This is going to be true regardless.
Right. This is true regardless. There are 2 places for 1 in the blue cells outside of this band.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now that we have filled this 1 in orange, we know that it's not in the yellow cells. So where does that leave in the middle band? It leaves the 2 target cells. So what we've shown is that if there's a 1 in orange, because we can only put 2 1s in these 2 rows, we at least need the 3rd one in the columns to be in one of the target cells. Again, they could both be 1. We haven't proven that they're not the same yet.
Right.
All we've shown is that if this cell is a 1, if this base cell is a 1, then at least one of the target cells is a 1. Could be both.
Yeah.
In which case we only need one more 1, and we would put it there. Okay. So that's fine for 1. And this is sort of akin to fish logic.
In fact,
like
in this case,
swordfish.
I'm seeing that if that orange cell were a 1, you would have to fill a 1. There would be a hidden single suddenly.
Yep.
But that's unrelated. Just it might make it easier to see in this particular case that you get a hidden single there, and now there's only 1. In row 2, you can only put 1 more. So the purple cells have to have at least 1.
In fact, this is just an aside, but calling back to some of our earlier. So this would be a hidden single if that were a 1.
Yeah.
And 1 couldn't go there. So the only places for 1 in these 2 columns are here. And now we have a skyscraper.
True.
So we have a strong link between the target cells. There is a 1 in at least one of the target cells. Could be both.
Yep.
Okay. So this is kind of like a finned swordfish. It's not exactly the same. What we're doing effectively, and here's the confusing part. These are called base cells. They have nothing to do with the base sets from fish. For the swordfish sort of looking thing that we're looking at here, these are our base sets, the columns.
Yeah.
In the Exocet terminology, they're called cross lines. You don't need to know the terminology, but if you see the terms, that's what they're talking
about. Right.
So for our sort of swordfish, these are our base sets. And this is a cover set.
Mm-hmm.
You could put 1 in these 2 cells. This is a cover set. And then this is sort of its own sort of weird, thin sort of cover set.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And that's how we show that if there's a 1 in orange, there has to be a 1 in purple. Okay, so it works for 1. Does it work for any other digit? Well, let's try 2. And this 2 could go here or here.
Mm-hmm.
The logic's going to be exactly the same. Where can 2 go in the blue cells? Can go in one of those. Can go in one of those. Again, 2 rows that can take 2. 2 can't go in any of the yellow cells. So at the very least, we need a third 2 in one of the purple cells. Could be both.
Yeah. And in this case, you don't get that hidden single, but it works the same way. You still have the swordfish logic.
Still have the swordfish logic. Okay, 8. Okay, 8 can't go here, so 8 can go up here. 9 as well can go up here. So if 8 or 9 are in orange, they have to be in the target cells.
Yep, that's clear.
Okay. Well, if all 4 of those digits have to be in the target cells, if they're in orange, 2 of them are in orange. We just don't know which ones. So whatever digits are in orange have to be in purple, and the orange cells aren't the same. So the purple cells aren't the same either, and must be exactly those 2 digits.
Yeah. Whatever goes in orange must be in purple.
Yep. Because if we put a 1 here, we put a 1 here and an 8 here, we've proven that there must be at least 1 in purple, 1 1 in purple, and at least 1 8 in purple. So we have to have exactly 1 1 and 1 8 in purple.
Yeah.
And we get this sort of weird 1 8 remote pair.
Yeah. A remote pair that goes through overlapping 1 8 swordfishes.
Right. Yeah. Basically what the Exocet does is it's sort of overlapping thin swordfish on 3 or 4 different digits that, because they overlap, it turns it into not a thin swordfish anymore. Effectively, these 2 cells are your third cover set.
Yeah. But
only for the digits that are actually in the base cells.
Yeah.
So that's not confusing at all. All right. I lost some pencil marks there. All right, so we've proven that the base cells have the same digits as the target cells. So the immediate, hopefully obvious conclusion is that any candidate that is in a target cell that's not in a base cell can't be true.
Yeah,
we can't put a 4 in the cell because we can't put it in orange.
And that may sound backwards, but if you think about it, if that purple were 4, you now have 2 different orange digits, and the only place they can go is in the 1 remaining purple cell, and it can't be both digits. So,
and it works both ways. In this case, we have the same 4 candidates in these cells, but if, say, this couldn't be 1, well, now neither of these can be 1 either, for the same reason.
And the other way around, if the purples can't be 1.
If these couldn't be 1, then this can't be 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first deduction we can make. We eliminated 4. That doesn't sound very exciting. We did all this work and we eliminated 4.
Sometimes 1 candidate is enough.
Sometimes it can. Sometimes it's not, though.
Yeah.
So there are other types of Exocet eliminations. So the next type involves what are called mirror cells. So I'm going to look at this cell here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to sort of color it gray just to make it stand out from the other target cell. We know whatever is in this target cell is also in one of the base cells.
Right.
We also know it's not in this target cell. So where does it go in box 5? Well, it can't go here, it can't go here, it can't go here. So it has to be in one of those.
Right.
Okay. So those 2 cells are called mirror cells. They're mirroring whatever's in this target cell. Just by basic Sudoku logic and the fact that that target cell has to have the same digit as one of the base cells.
Right.
We have the same thing down here. This digit is also up here. It's not in the other target cell, so it has to be in one of these cells. I didn't want to highlight those green, but that's okay. So now, that second example, go ahead.
because there's that given 6 there, it's much more powerful because we know exactly which cell
Right.
is the mirror cell.
We know that this is not a 1, 2, 8, or 9. So it's not the mirror cell. The mirror cell is here, and it can't be an 8 or a 9 because of the column. So we can actually say this target cell can't be an 8 or a 9 either.
And if that doesn't make sense, think again, it's kind of a weird reverse of the logic.
Right.
But imagine that purple cell were an 8, for example. Well, now we know one of the oranges is 8. And so now where does 8 go in row 3 of box 4? It looks like it could go there, but now our 2 purple cell, our target cells are both 8.
Right.
And
now
we know that's
have
not allowed.
nowhere for this 2 that we put in the other base cell.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's another type of elimination you can make. These 2 cells, because this is a given 6, these 2 cells have to have the same digits. So this could have been a 4, but it can't be a 4 because we couldn't put 4 in a target cell. We eliminated 4 there. And also, this couldn't be 8 or 9, so this can't be 8 or 9. It's a 1 or a 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we could figure out which of the 2 greens, like let's say row 5, column 4, we knew was the other mirror cell, that can't be a 9, and so now we would know that.
Yeah.
The other target cell.
If we knew this was a 5, we know this one can't be a 9. We know it has to be from 1, 2, 8, 9. So this is from 1, 2, 8, and this is from 1, 2, 8.
Right.
For example. Now, actually, this can't be a 5. And this is the slightly more complicated mirror cell deduction that we can make.
Okay.
Because there are 2 6s here. So we know one of these green cells is a 6. Just like down here, one of these cells was a 6. It's just this one was a given 6. Here we have a pointing pair 6. So one of the green cells is a 6, and we know one of the green cells is a mirror cell of this target. So in fact, we know that this is from 1, 2, 6, 8, 9. One of these is a 6. The other one is whatever this purple digit is.
Yeah. And it might be helpful to do coloring, to remind yourself which ones are the same as which, if that's useful for you.
Yeah, so, I mean, you might run out of colors if you're coloring all these. You don't really need the yellow, but
yeah,
say these are red and this is, I don't know, what have we not used? We use gray again. And actually we know that that's not. So these are the same. This is the same as one of these, and there's a 6. Now you won't always have this. Sometimes you'll have 2 possible mirror cells, and you can't make any further deduction immediately. Yeah. It may be worth remembering later on. But
you could also make the orange cells like gray, red, right? Just to remind yourself that those are the 2 digits that are going to go there.
Yeah, sure.
So, however you want to remember it, like you don't have to use this exact coloring.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I chose the coloring for the base cells and the cross lines and the mirror cells is that is what every Exocet diagram I've ever seen uses for those cells. But you can use whatever you want. Yeah. Whatever is going to be helpful to you.
I was just thinking that, if you're keeping this Exocet around, you may not want to, you don't necessarily need all of those blue cells and yellow cells and sticking around. You could just try to color code to remind yourself the important bits that come out of that.
Yeah. So just to review our first 2 types of deduction. First one is, since the target cells have to be the same digits as the base cells, we can eliminate any candidates that are in one but not the other. The second has to do with the mirror cells. The mirror cells have to mirror one of the target cells, so we can make eliminations based on that. If we only have one possible mirror cell, like in this case, then we know exactly that these are the same digit. If we have 2 possible mirror cells, We may not be able to do anything, but sometimes there will be a different digit that's restricted to those two cells.
You could also just look and see if there's any candidates missing from those mirror cells that could be eliminated from its target cell.
Yeah, in this case, what we're eliminating is 5. 5 could have been in here, but because we have a 6 and either a 1, 2, 8, or 9, we eliminate 5.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, that actually helps in this puzzle.
It seems to place a 5 in row 4, column 2.
Column 2. No, because it's not here and not here, so it's up here.
Oh, right, it's up there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One of these. But yeah.
I was looking at that backwards.
Somewhere it is helpful, I think, from what I recall of the solve path, but I don't remember exactly. Okay, regardless. The third type of deduction we can't make immediately in most cases. But it has to do with that fish logic that we were talking about. We know if there's a 1 here, then there has to be a 1 in one of these cells.
Mm-hmm.
But it's exactly one of these cells now. It's not both.
Yeah.
So we need a 1 in these 2 rows, or we can't fill those columns. So if we know there's a 1 here, we know there's not a 1 in any of these cells and any of these cells.
Right.
Because effectively because of a swordfish.
You've now created a weird swordfish that eliminates from the swordfish rows, as you'd expect.
Now, usually you won't know that. Sometimes you'll have a case where one of the digits has to be in the base cells. And in that case, you'll be able to use the fish logic. In other cases, you'll have to wait until you fill a digit, and then you can use the fish logic. Whether it's helpful or not, I don't know. Sometimes it will be. Sometimes you'll have already eliminated all those fish digits before. But
yeah,
it's worth keeping in mind. And it will play a very important role in the puzzle from last time that we're going to save for the end.
Okay.
We'll see why. Okay. So all of that is a junior Exocet.
So that's the simplest form of Exocet that's easiest to find.
Yeah. So just to review the conditions, we have 2 base cells that are in the same box and in the same row or column. I'm going to assume they're in the same row.
Mm-hmm.
Flip all the row and column terminology from here if they're in the column. We have 2 target cells that are in the same band as the base cells, but in different rows. They don't necessarily have to be in different rows from each other, but usually they are. And the reason they usually are is if they're in the same row, there's probably something simpler you can do.
Okay.
I'll show an example of that in a little bit. Then for each of the digits that's in the base cell, that digit has to be restricted in the other bands so that it can appear in at most 2 rows. So we restricted the 1 in these 2 rows in the blue cells and the cross lines. Same for the 2. Same for the 8 and 9. So if that's true for all of the digits in the base cells, then we can conclude that the 2 digits that are in the base cells in the final solution of the puzzle are going to be in the 2 target cells.
You also have to have that given 7 and 3.
Yeah. So, yeah, these actually have a name as well. I'm totally out of colors here. These are called companion cells. So you can have sort of complicated Exocet type things where you don't have a given here, and these sort of act as a target cell together.
Oh,
we're not going to get into that. That's it's brutal.
Mm-hmm. It's like a finned Exocet almost.
Yeah, but usually if you're going to be able to make any deductions at all, any eliminations with the Exocet, you're going to have these givens in the two cells that are companions to the target cells.
Yeah.
So they're in the same rows as the target cells, in the same columns as the target cells, just flipped.
And they are going to have to be givens, because there's no way that you're eliminating all of the base cell digits from those cells without also touching the target cells. Like, I don't see how you would have that happen.
Yeah, you could maybe have like a hidden pair or something in the row.
It sounds like quite a challenge, so I don't think it's going to come up.
I can't think of an example where that's the case.
Maybe you could use like Y wings or other wings to do remote eliminations targeting just those cells or something.
Yeah. I know it happens with Set, where you can end up with pairs, or even just something like one is limited to one of these two cells, which are both in our set. So we know there's a one in somewhere. We just don't know where it is. Things like that. So maybe you can have that for an Exocet. I'm not sure. So don't hold me to that.
Yeah.
All right, that's a junior.
Okay.
We're going to go over one more example of a junior, which is a puzzle by Shye. This is Valtari. Simon did this on CTC a while back.
Yep.
This was also included in our classic Sudoku pack. If you haven't checked that out, presumably we can include a link to that.
Yeah, I'll include a link in the description. It is an awesome classic Sudoku pack. How many puzzles are in it again?
Close to 50. I don't know exactly how many.
Somewhere around 50 classics that all are designed to teach a specific.
Yeah. Teach might be a little too strong a word. They're designed to showcase. But if you find them, you're going to learn something in the process. They're all about discovering techniques that might be new to you, or might not be new to you if you've been watching our Sudokult discussion, because a lot of them are alternating inference chains, or fish, or set, or something that we've discussed. So if you've been watching, you might have a little bit of an advantage. I'm mentioning it because I haven't prepared puzzles for a challenge for next time, because we haven't actually decided what we're going to do next time yet. But I figure try the puzzles in the pack. There are some things in here that we haven't discussed, and if you're interested in those can definitely be topics for future videos.
All right.
I have one in mind that we might do next, but we'll see. Anyway, so this is a puzzle by Shye.
I suspect it'll be an odd one.
Yeah. David knows. All right. So have you solved this puzzle? Or
I watched Simon solve it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a little bit different setup. And it's very well telegraphed because Shye made it very well telegraphed. Like, there are certain cells that are calling you to pay attention to them. But compared to this one, you don't have this 3x3 pattern. Yeah. This draws my eye immediately whenever I see it. And I'm sure part of that is from tattooing puzzles.
But, even without our clown coloring.
Yeah. In this case, we have a 2x3. But those columns are still kind of suspicious. Why are they suspicious? Well, we also have some other digits in them. And we don't have any 2s, 3s, or 4s in those cells. And we do have, so unlike before, we had a 1, a 2, a 3, a 1, a 2, an 8, or a 9 outside of our pattern. Here we have 2 2s, 2 2s, 2 3s, and 2 4s. Right. So we're going to end up with a swordfish type thing again. But instead of the givens blocking 3 of the rows, the givens are only going to block 2 of the rows and the given 2s, 3s, and 4s are going to take care of 2 more rows each.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's exactly the same type of setup. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the cells outside of that band.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're suspicious about an Exocet in here. So where do you think the base cells are in this case?
In box 5.
Yeah.
Row 5. Because that's the one that's split by the blue cells that you've highlighted.
Right. And just like before, if we looked at this from a set perspective, we have 4 cells. And in terms of set, we would need, I think in this case, 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4. But we have 4 cells.
Is that because it would be an imbalanced set, right? Because we'd be 4 rows
it's
in
imbalanced,
our set.
Yeah. I'm not going to highlight it yet because we're going to talk about the set version in a minute.
Okay.
So these base cells are seen, 2 of those.
Yeah. So those are your yellow cells, right?
Yeah, these are my yellow cells. These are also yellow cells, but they're already givens, so
yeah,
doesn't matter. These are our target cells. These are just companion cells. Color them red. Okay, and the companion cells don't have to be right next to the target cells. They're just sharing a row with one of the target cells, a column with the other target cell.
Gotcha.
Same with this. Okay. So, same setup. Should be pretty easy to go through the logic here. So, if this were a 2, where can 2 go in columns 3, 5, and 7?
Just in row 7 and 9, it looks like.
Yeah, row 7 and 9. Or one of the target cells.
Right.
If this is a 2, it can't go in these yellow cells.
Right.
Okay, so if 2 is in orange, it's also in purple. 3, it can go in row 7 and row 1. 4 can go in row 3 and row 7. Okay. Alright, so we've proven that if there's a 2, a 3, or a 4 in orange, it has to be in purple. Therefore, whatever is in orange has to be in purple. We can eliminate 6, eliminate 1, 4, 7, 9, lots of stuff. Oh, not 4. Sorry. Did I eliminate 4? I think I was eliminated from last puzzle.
Don't transpose your exosets between puzzles. It's not going to be useful.
Yeah, it's really not. Okay. So, that's our basic deductions that we can make. We can also look at mirror cells. So, this cell, whatever's in here, is in here. So, it's in one of these. And this is in one of these. Do we have any limitations on those cells?
So, not that I can immediately tell.
I don't think we do immediately. I think, from what I remember, later on in the solve, you'll get a 6 here, maybe, something like that.
So that sounds about right.
And then you can get a mirror cell here. But for now, we'll leave those alone.
Actually, this makes a hidden 6 in box.
Oh yeah, there is a hidden 6 because we eliminated this 6. So yeah, it is straight away a hidden 6. So this is now, a mirror cell.
That's a mirror cell now, and that's a 2, 3, or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't be 3. So since it can't be 3, that goes back to that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew there was a 6 there. I just forgot why. Okay. There's one more special thing about this particular puzzle. So in this puzzle, we had more yellow cells, right? That were empty.
Right.
Here we only have the 2 yellow cells that are empty. And we know one of them is a 1, right?
Right.
In fact, we know that this is a 1, 2, 3, 4 quad.
Right.
Well, if these two orange cells are the same as the purple cells, then this is also a quad.
Right.
So we have exactly a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 in those cells. So in our 3 columns 3, 5, and 7, the middle band only has exactly 1 of those digits. And we need 3 total. So we have to have a 3 here, we have to have a 4 here, we have to have a 2 here, and we have to have a 2, 3, and 4 here. And we get a triple.
So you just immediately get all the swordfish eliminations.
We immediately get all the swordfish eliminations because there can only be 1 of each digit here. We couldn't do that here because we could have 8 and 8 here, say. That's a bad example. We could have... I don't know what a good example is, actually.
That's fine. You don't need one.
Anyway. In theory, we could have 2 of a 9 or 2 of an 8 or whatever in here.
Yeah.
But in this case, we have this sort of weird hidden quad, and this is exactly what Simon found in his solve. This sort of weird hidden quad that restricts what can go in the other rows. And this breaks the puzzle open.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the junior Exocet version. Let's clear all that. Let's clear all of the pencil marks. And 6. Alright, let's look at it with set. So we're already suspicious of these columns, right?
Yes.
It's going to be the same columns as our cross lines. For the rows, we have 5, 8, 9, 5, 6, 9, 1, 8, 6, 5, 7. We don't have 2, 3, 4. So for the rows, we want to add the rows that have 2, 3, 4 in them. Okay?
Okay.
So there's our set. All right. So we have 2 2s, 2 3s, 2 4s. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blue cells. So we only have 1 degree of freedom this time.
Right, so there's 6 digits in red that must be in blue, and blue has 7 open slots.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 2 ways to look at this. There's the more like an Exocet way, and there's the really, really easy way. So we'll do the really, really easy way second.
Okay.
So the more like an Exocet way, let's go back to our base cells. These are from 2, 3, 4 still. Whatever they are.
Yep.
So these cells can't be in these cells. Right?
Yeah.
So we definitely can't have both of these blue cells be from 2, 3, 4.
That would just make way too many 2, 3, 4s in them.
So one of these cells is not 2, 3, 4. So we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus whichever one of them is from 2, 3, 4. So we conclude that those are 2, 3, 4, and one of these is 2, 3, 4, and the other one is 1.
Yeah.
Okay. And that works.
So one way to think about that is 1 is limited to one of those 2, just
right.
for the quad.
So that's the easy way.
Yeah.
There's a 1 in one of those cells.
Yeah.
So we don't have 7 empty cells, we have 6.
Yeah.
So now we have no degrees of freedom with our set. So the remaining blue cells have to be from 2, 3, 4. The remaining red cells can't be from 2, 3, 4, or we would have too many of them.
Right,
So
we're not allowed to put any more 2, 3s, or 4s into red.
So we can fill those with the other digits. Now this is equivalent, exactly equivalent, to the swordfish eliminations that we made.
Right.
we said there has to be a 3 in one of these cells and a 3 in one of these cells. So there can't be a 3 in these cells.
Right.
There can't be a 2 or a 4 in those cells either, because there's 2 and 4 in the row.
Yeah.
Same for 4. There has to be a 4 in one of these cells and one of these cells.
Right.
There has to be a 2 in one of these cells and one of these cells. So it's the same eliminations that we would have gotten from the fish. The same Exocet eliminations here. One of these has to be, or each of these has to be 2, 3, 4. The set, it's not immediately obvious that these 2 cells, which I color purple again, have to be the same as these, just from a counting point of view, but you can get there.
Yeah, well, so I can already see that you have 1 of 2, 3, 4 in row 7 because of the triple.
Yeah, we have 1 of each, so we need 1 more in these cells. So it has to be a quad.
And the ones that are in row 5 can't be the same as the orange cells.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can get there.
Yeah, basically set is telling us that these 4 cells have to be a quad, and we already know these 4 cells have to be a quad.
Right.
So the cells not in common have to be the same. So all of the deductions you can make are equivalent.
What about the mirror cells, though?
The mirror cells are basically just roping and pointing and singles and things like that. Right. We get our 6 here still.
Yep.
We can conclude that whatever goes here is also in one of these, is also here.
Right.
So it works the same way, but it's kind of, we know to look for it because we know it's an Exocet.
Right.
And if you're just applying set to it, you may not know to look for it. So knowing that this is an Exocet helps from that point of view.
Right.
So in this case, we didn't actually need to use the base cells to use the set, right?
True.
We could have just recognized that there has to be a 1 in one of these, so that removes our degree of freedom. That won't always be the case. Sometimes you'll have a set that has degrees of freedom, and you actually have to use the base cells to say, okay, whatever's in these can't be in all these other cells, so it's restricted in that way. Okay.
And this is kind of what we were talking about, I believe, in our last episode. We were looking at brute force, and we didn't solve it. But we were talking about how there was a fin. There was 1 fin in our set.
Yeah.
We were calling it a fin, for lack of a better term. And we didn't know there were so many candidate cells for it could be. We had no way of narrowing it down. But in this case, it seems like the sort of Exocet logic isolates just a couple cells where the fin could be.
Yeah.
And thus, all the other ones are not the fin. And we can complete the set in those cells.
Yeah, effectively, these 2 cells, the 1 is the fin.
Yeah.
And that's true of set just generally. Most of the time when you see a puzzle designed to have set, at least a classic, you're just going to be counting the given digits. But you can have a puzzle where one of the cells, say, I don't know, there's not a good example in this. Say this 5. I can't even remove it because it's a given. Say this 5. We didn't know it was a given 5, but it was limited to be a 5 or a 9, say. And this was limited to be a 5 or a 9. Whatever. It's not going to work out here. We can still use the fact that it's one of those digits, and it's not a 2, 3, or 4, to count it toward the set.
Right.
Same way, we know that one of these cells is a 1, so we can't limit which cell is part of the blue set of digits, but we know one of them is, so we can count that towards it. You can have more complicated logic too. I've seen a case where it was an MSLS that I was looking at, and I was trying to find the equivalent set, and it turned out that the simplest way to look at it was there was some sort of chain, maybe like a skyscraper sort of chain on 3s, where one of these 2 cells has to be a 3. You don't know which, but they're both in the same partition, and that's getting our degree of freedom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you can have sort of that sort of thing. With something like brute force, there were like 20 possible fins, and we couldn't get anywhere. But it can happen. It's kind of the advanced thing. All right, I'm going to show this real quick.
Okay.
This puzzle is called Not Valtari by Notshy. So something I just modified. It has multiple solutions, I think. But I just wanted to show what would happen if the target cells are in the same row.
Okay.
There's nothing really preventing it. But in this case, I think the set logic is a little simpler to follow, if I recall correctly. So in this case, I mean, we have exactly the same thing. We have 2 4s, we have 2 2s, we have 2 3s, all the same logic. This time the orange cells are still eliminating these, but these are our givens.
Yeah.
These are our companion cells. So these see each other. So one thing that's different is immediately we know they're not the same.
Yep.
So that's helpful. But all the other logic works exactly the same. There's nothing wrong with this. And just immediately say that from the Exocet.
Right. It's the same Exocet.
It's the same Exocet. However, if I look at the set version... No. Click the wrong thing. If I look at the set version, we need 2 3 4. It's going to be the same, basically. Yeah, so we're still going to have a 1 in one of those cells. And it results in a total of 6 cells that can have 2 3 4. I think maybe you can do something with adding these or something like that. But anyway, the point is the logic is exactly the same if the 2 target cells are in the same row.
Okay.
You just don't see it as often.
Yeah.
There's something simpler. And there might be something simpler here.
Maybe the fact that the puzzle's not unique removed the something simpler that you can do usually.
Maybe. I mean,
yeah.
there is a basic set that you can find here. Or it may be a more complicated set that doesn't use this, but at least in SLS. Anyway, nothing wrong with doing that. If that's what you find, great.
Okay.
It's the same logic.
Yeah.
All right. How are we doing on time? I don't know how long I've been going.
53 minutes.
Oh. Okay. I'm going to talk very quickly about this one.
Okay.
I'm not going to go through the whole logic. So this one, the base cells are here, the target cells are here. So if we look at our cross lines, this is a lot like Valtari in the sense that we only have 2 columns that have givens in them, right?
Right.
Unlike Valtari, however, we only have 1 2, and we only have 1 5, and we only have 1 8. So we can actually put a 5 in a lot more places, right?
Yeah.
Put 5 in 3 places. So this doesn't work as a junior Exocet. So how can we get around that? Any idea?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so in the junior Exocet, it was kind of like a swordfish, right?
Yeah.
We had 2 rows that were serving as cover sets outside of that band. Here we have 3 columns serving as cover sets. And we want to have a 4th over here in the target cells, right?
So do we need to add like a 4th row and do a jellyfish?
We're going to do a jellyfish. So we're going to add this row. The reason this works is there are givens here.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also givens here. And that becomes yellow.
Ah.
So now we're good. Now we could still put 5 here, but it's the same 3 columns.
Yeah, so it's 3 columns for 4 rows.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can do the same thing on 5 and 2 and 8. 3 is a little different. Sometimes you'll see this. There are actually 2 3s outside, but there's already a 3 here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is taking one of the spots. So the 3s are acting like a swordfish on the original cross lines. So that's called a JE2.
JE2, okay.
So Junior Exocet 2.
So Junior Exocet uses swordfishes. Junior Exocet 2
jellyfish.
uses jellyfishes. Okay.
Yeah. It can use swordfish on some of the digits, but it uses jellyfish on at least one of the digits.
Are there any squirm bags?
I haven't seen one. It wouldn't surprise me. But I'm not going to go through the set version of this, but you can do something very similar where you're adding these 4 rows.
So you'd add those 4 rows, and then
you're adding, I guess, these columns, or the 8, 3, 5, 2 are. And then you end up with some deduction using the base set.
I wouldn't think you'd need column 9, but maybe.
I think you need it for the 5, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
Could be wrong. So I wrote a while back a document about viewing Exocets as set. We can link that as well. This puzzle is discussed in that. It's been a while since I wrote this, and I would do it a little differently now. One of the things I did is add boxes to the set logic to balance the sets and make it a little more like a thinned set sort of thing. I don't think that's really necessary in most cases, but it's a thing that exists. All right, this one is very different and tricky. It's got something a little special. So if I were looking at this as a junior Exocet and hoping it's a junior Exocet, what's my problem?
See, 1, 2, 6, 7. Well, 6 and 7 work. 2 works, but I don't think 1 is restricted.
Okay, there's a simpler problem.
Oh,
there's no digit there.
Oh, right.
Okay, so we don't know that this can't be 1, 2, 6, or well, it can't be 1, 6, or 7, but it could be 2. This can be 2, 3, or 5. So that's going to break down our junior Exocet.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't rule the 2 out here. Okay. Well, that's okay, because this is not a junior Exocet. This is a senior Exocet.
Okay.
So what is a senior Exocet? Senior Exocet looks like a junior Exocet, except one or both of the target cells are not in the same band or stack. They're somewhere else in the crossline.
Wow, those are far away.
Yeah. In fact, they could be in the same crossline.
Oh.
I've seen that before. Okay. Sometimes that's really the only difference. Sometimes you have a given 9 here. And the logic is otherwise exactly the same. So, if one of these is a 1, where does 1 go in those columns? It can't go here. It can't go here. Can't go here, here, here. Those are our yellow cells. We already have a 1 here. Oh, actually, 1 is a bad example. I picked a bad example for this. If one of these is a 1, this just is a 1.
Yeah.
By Sudoku.
Right.
That's a bad example. Let's look at 6. So if one of these is a 6, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go in this row.
Right.
And it can't go in that cell because of the box. So we have 2 rows plus
2 rows for 3 columns plus the target cell.
Target cells, but we ruled it out of there. Okay.
Okay, so if it's a 6, then we know exactly where the 6 goes.
Yeah.
Because of that swordfish.
Same for the 7. 7 is right next to the 6. Works exactly the same.
Okay.
What about the 2? 2 works the same way, basically. It can go on one of these rows.
Yep.
But it can't go hovered over something. It can't go in any of those cells there. So we're left with one of the target cells. Even though the target cell is way up here, it still has to be in one of those cells. So in fact, in this case, if this were 9, and we don't know that it's a 9, whatever these 2 cells are have to be here and here. And since the only digit from the orange cells that is in this target cell is a 2, we just get a 2 there. And one of these has to be a 2. And this is not a 2. Okay.
Okay.
So that's kind of how a senior Exocet works. This is a little bit more complicated of an example, because in this case a 2 could be here. Yeah. It seems like that would be a problem. So let's think about why it's a problem, or why it's not a problem, rather. If there's a 2 in orange, 2 can go in one of these 2 rows, and then 2 can go in one of these cells. Has to be in at least one of those cells. What happens if it's here, though?
It just immediately places the 2 in there.
Places it in that target. So if 2 is in orange, it's in one of the targets. We know that's not going to work out because this target has to be the 2. But what we've proven is by Sudoku, basically, if there's a 2 here and a 2 here, there has to be a 2 there, so it's in a target. The only other case is that there's a 2 there in a target.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit more complicated logic, showing that you can have some other empty cells as long as they force the digit into a target somehow.
Right.
So
that's pretty complex analysis there, but
it is. Yeah, this was in my document, and when I was reviewing it for this episode, I realized that's a really complicated deduction to include in the And it's because I didn't go through the senior Exocet at all for this. I went through the set explanation of it in the document. But same type of thing works.
Do you want to go over the set for this one?
We'll go over the set for the last one. So
okay,
we'll save it for that. But the basic idea is the same. You're going to put columns in one, you're going to put rows in the other, and maybe you need to use the base sets or the base cells seeing other cells.
And the base cells will not be in the set.
They won't be in the set ever, because they're not in the column. And they're never going to be in the rows that we highlight, because the rows that we highlight are always going to be the ones with the base candidates outside of that band.
Right.
Okay. Last puzzle. So this was the challenge puzzle. This is also in the pack. This is a double junior Exocet.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, you can solve this with just a regular junior Exocet. The reason double junior Exocets are special is they give just a ton of eliminations.
Okay. Easily
the Sudoku technique that has the most eliminations.
Oh, I'm excited.
I think this one has like 49 eliminations. It's a ton. MSLS set, maybe 20 something. Maybe 30 something if you're really pushing. Okay, so let's see how this works. We've got our 3x3 pattern again.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There it is right there. And we've got this very suspicious alignment of 5s. It's almost like somebody put those there on purpose.
Almost like someone put those. Yeah.
All right, so let's highlight this blue. Now, I've got a bunch of cells marked here.
Yeah.
Which ones do you think are the base cells?
I think that column 1, row 8, 9 are base cells, and I think column 3, row 1, 2 are base cells.
You're right. They're both sets of base cells. So let's look at column 1 first. So these 2 base cells, C, here, and here, and here, and here.
Mm-hmm.
So I bet those are going to be our target cells.
Is there a reason you didn't yellow in row 6, or just not important?
In row... Oh, because it's in the cross line. We only care about the cross lines.
Oh, okay.
We don't care about those. I just clicked it by mistake. All right, so 6. Outside of this stack, it can't go here, so it's limited to 2 columns.
Sure is.
7, limited to 2 columns.
There it is, yep.
8, limited to the same 2 columns. Should have just left it highlighted. 9 is limited to this column, and in fact, this cell.
Just that cell, yeah.
But it's also already here.
Yeah, okay.
So it's still 2.
Yeah.
So usually what you'll have, we have 1 6 outside of this pattern. We have 1 7 outside of this pattern. We have 1 8 outside of this pattern. We have 2 9s because there's a 9 in the 3x3.
Right.
That's usually how it works. Or you only have the 2x3 and you need an extra of each of them. Okay, so we know we only have 2 places to put them over here. We have to put them in the stack somewhere if they're in orange. So if there's a 6 here, one of these has to be a 6. If there's an 8 here, one of these has to be an 8.
Right.
Okay. So that's a junior exocet. You can use that. This one might be the one that solves the puzzle. I don't remember. It eliminates a 4 there.
Right.
Does it do anything with the mirror cells? So this cell has to be here.
Mm-hmm. So that's a 6, 7, or 8.
That's a 6, 7, or 8. This one has to be up here somewhere. I don't think we can do anything else with that immediately. I'm probably missing a singles placement. Doesn't matter because we're going to get.
It makes a 6, 7, 8, 9 quad. So I'm wondering if you could.
Yeah, there is a quad right here.
Well, no. So because we know that target cell, that 6, 7, 8, 9 target cell in row 5, column 3. Row 5, column 3.
Oh,
that target cell. It's mirrored in one of those 2.
Yeah, it does.
With the mirror cell with those is going to make a 6, 7, 8, 9 quad. That eliminates.
Yeah, we're actually going to fill both of these because this is a quad as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That has to be a 2. This has to be 4.
Okay.
Because it's not 6, 7, 8, 9. So this may be the one that solves the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's look at the other one. So I'm going to unhighlight those.
Okay.
I'll leave these. So let's color these red.
Okay.
Same logic is going to apply. Exactly the same.
Exactly
6
the same.
is still limited the same way.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 red cells, in this case, they see this cell and this cell, and they see these 2 cells.
Right.
So when you have a double, one set of base cells is going to see the other target cells.
Right.
Same here. Let's use gray for this. These 2 base cells see these 2 target cells.
Right. Okay. And it's the same candidates as well.
It doesn't necessarily have to be, but I've never seen an example where they're not. So usually with Exocets, you have 3 or 4 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, you could have one with 5, but it would be very hard to construct a puzzle that had 5 candidates in your base cells that didn't just collapse some other way, because you would need so many digits over here.
Okay.
So yeah, there are four candidates in each of these in this case. And the reason it's so powerful when they're on the same candidates, and they almost always will be, I can't really think of a realistic way that it wouldn't be.
Right.
I eliminate the 2 there. But what I just said is that the orange cells see the 2 gray target cells from the other.
Right.
And the red cells see the 2 purple cells. So the red cells and the orange cells can't be the same.
Yeah.
So the red cells are in the gray cells, and the orange cells are in the purple cells.
Yeah.
So they form a quad. So what I know then is that these 2 cells are not from 6, 7, 8, 9, and we filled them a minute ago, just based on one of them. But we can definitely do it now, because we've got this weird base cell quad.
Yeah.
Right? We also have this weird target cell quad. So in the cross lines in row 3, 5, and 7, we have exactly 1, 6, 7, 8, or 9 in those 4 cells. They're not here.
Yeah.
So that means we need our 2 8s over here. We need our 2 7s over here. So we get all of the fish logic. That's where most of the eliminations come from.
Does it place that 9?
Yeah, it places this 9 immediately. I don't know.
And 6, 7, 8 triple.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8 triple. We know 2 of these are 7, 8. We know 1 of these is 6.
Yeah.
We know there's a 3 up here with the other 6, 7, 8, 9. We know there's a 1 down here with the other one.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. Yeah. So it gives a lot because they overlap and because they see each other in this weird way.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why the double is so powerful. Now, every example that I've ever looked at that has a double that solves the puzzle, one of the juniors also solves the puzzle.
Unfortunately. But it's fun to do the double because you get all these...
It's so fun to do.
It's just faster to solve the puzzle at that point, probably.
Yeah. You also get that these are 6, 7, 8, 9, just as a bonus. Because of the way the quads work.
Yeah.
So that's a 2, 4. And you actually kind of have a triple. It's just a weird triple sort of Exocet. It happens that these other 2 cells are the same as these 2 cells.
Okay.
So it's not really a triple Exocet because they're on different digits and you're not using any of the fish logic. But it kind of works out that way. So I think it's kind of cute.
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at the set version of this.
Okay.
Shouldn't take very long. I've got so many digits in the grid. Get rid of all that. Get rid of these. All right. Rid of that. We're going to highlight our 3 rows. We're going to highlight these columns. These were the columns where 6, 7, 8, and 9. Well, 2 things. Where they are outside of blue.
Yep.
And where they could be in blue.
Right.
As blue currently sits. Okay, so we're going to remove those. And remember, these cells where they overlap were where our 6, 7, 8, 9 had to be.
Right.
Fish logic. So we're gonna get that back when we do this. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3. Well, let's just do 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 5 from 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yep.
We have a 9 already in blue.
So we need 4 and 6.
Yeah. We need 4 and 6 again. So how can we get 4 and 6?
Are we going to have to use the base cells?
I'm going to use the base cells. So whatever's in these cells, which we know are from 6, 7, 8, 9, can't be in these.
Right.
Can't be in these. But we know there's a 6, 7, 8, 9 in blue somewhere.
Yeah.
So if there's a 6 here, it has to be in one of these cells.
Right.
So it's the same Exocet logic. It's just getting at it straight away just by counting.
Yeah.
Can't be in those, so it has to be in one of those.
Right.
Same thing for this one. Red's a bad choice. Let's make it green this time. Can't be in these. Has to be in these.
Right.
And isn't that a lot easier than all the crazy fish logic that I've
Yeah, you still have to see it, and you have to recognize.
You still have to see that there's this limitation.
Yeah.
But what you're looking for, so if you don't have 0 degrees of freedom, if you have 1 degree of freedom, maybe you can do something like we did in Valtari, where there has to be a 1 in one of those.
Right.
If you have more degrees of freedom and it's not immediately obvious how you're going to get another digit somewhere, first check that you have the right set, because you may have a better set. But if you think you have the right set, look at cells that see most of the empty cells.
The empty cells, yeah.
And if those cells are also restricted to the red digits in this case, that's where you might have an Exocet set, which I just call an Exocet with an S instead of a C.
Capitalize the SET, just Exocet. Yeah.
So that's it. That's all I have for today. If we link the pack, there are several Exocet puzzles in there, including this one, which you know how to start now. You can finish it off if you want to. Valtari's in there. There are also some more complicated ones.
More complicated, okay.
I'm thinking in particular of The Mutant by Jovial. Yeah, she went a little mad with power on that one. So. But it is an Exocet. It's just, it's a hard one to logic through.
Yeah.
So, good luck with that.
Yeah, this was a great episode. I learned how exosets work, and I learned how to use set to find those, which hopefully will be, if you're playing with set anyway, maybe now you'll recognize when you find some kind of exoset without having to search for exosets specifically. Yeah. So I think this was really awesome. I actually had no idea that set episode 3 would be exosets, which was pretty great there. Yeah. Below, we won't have a specific practice puzzle for you, but we do have a pack of 50-something classics that you can work through. Hopefully that's enough to bide you till our next episode. And we'll also link Philip's document where he describes, various exosets and how to describe them using set.
And eventually I will update that and hopefully make everything clearer. But
yeah,
I'm working on... I know not everybody learns through watching two guys discuss something on YouTube for an hour. So for those of you who don't, I am starting to work on written versions of these things that just focus on a single technique and explain how it works. And yeah, if you're trying out the puzzles in the pack, feel free to hit us up on Discord, on David's Discord for his solver, on the CTC Discord. We also have a Discord for the pack itself. There's a link in the pack, I think, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, I think there should be.
Any of those avenues if you want to discuss those puzzles.
Great, yeah. Discord is the way to discuss.
Yes.
Lots of options there. And if you aren't subscribed, please remember to subscribe. As of this recording, I just hit 700 subscribers, so that's awesome.
Congrats.
The goal is 1,000. So if we can get to 1,000, that would be awesome. Tell your friends. Just have them hit that subscribe button. Got to pump those numbers up. So also like the video, comment, share it with your friends if you think that this will interest them. And we will try to be back on our normal schedule of producing these videos, but we can't account for various life events. Yeah. But we are doing our best. And the next episode will be not set, and a little bit odd, but hopefully very enjoyable. And I actually really like the technique that we're going to be doing next time. So stay tuned for that. And that's it.
All right.
Thank you for watching.